A beautiful, functional island can completely change the look and feel of your kitchen, and it's not as difficult as you might think to build one on your own. Today, I'll show you just how easy it is. I'm Todd Dermody, and this is Done DIY. For today's project, we're using a two-part epoxy. If you've never worked with epoxy finishes before, don't worry. It's easier than it looks. Just follow the directions on the box. When working with epoxy, you'll want to work in a dust-free environment above 70 degrees. To find out more about this project, check out our blog post. If you're watching on YouTube, click the link below. This project has two parts, the base and the top surface. We're going to work our way from the bottom up and build a functional base first using cabinets. Start by measuring the bottom of your cabinet, just the box itself, not the door. Ours is 12 inches by 21 inches. Cut a rectangular frame to fit the bottom of the cabinet base using 2x4s with an outside dimension of 12 inches by 21 inches. Miter the corners to create a frame around the base. Cut the end of a 2x4 at 45 degrees using a circular saw coupled with a speed square. You can also use a miter box and a handsaw. Measure 12 inches from the point of the board and mark. Using a speed square, draw a line at a 45-degree angle 12 inches from the point. This piece and subsequent pieces will have opposing angles, like a picture frame. In other words, the cut ends create opposing 45-degree angles to make a corner. Using this cut piece as a template, mark a second piece by setting the cut board on top of the long board and marking it with a pencil before you cut. Now for the other sides, measure a 21-inch piece from the point of the long board, mark an opposing 45-degree angle, and cut your third side. Using this side as a template, mark and cut the fourth and last side. Now it's time to assemble the frame at the base of the cabinet. Turn the cabinet base upside down and place one of the short 2x4s along the front edge of the base of the cabinet. Center it and screw it in place with 2-inch screws. Anything longer than 2 inch will likely protrude through the floor of the cabinet. Next, line up one of the long sides on the bottom of the base, making sure it's centered and abuts the first piece with minimal gap. Then fasten into place with 2-inch screws. Repeat this process for the last two sides of your frame. To mount the casters, lay them out on your frame. Position the screw holes in the casters so that the screws will sink into the 2x4 frame without hitting other screw heads or seams of the frame. Mark a spot for each hole using an awl, then screw the casters into place using 1 5/8" screws. The back of our cabinet was unfinished, so to give it a cleaner look, we added contact paper to the back of the cabinet to hide unfinished wood. To accessorize, you can also install hooks and hardware now to hold cutting boards, pot holders, or dish towels. When it comes to finishing your countertop, you have lots of options to put your own spin on it. Butcher block, marble, tile, and so on. We opted to use a shiny, white epoxy finish using plywood as the countertop base. From this step on, things will get a bit messy, so lay out a drop cloth to create a workspace large enough to allow you to work freely. This will protect your floors from epoxy that will drip over the edges of the countertop. Level your countertop on a temporary platform so the liquid epoxy will dry evenly. We used plastic shims and a bullseye level to make sure everything was flat as possible. Following the epoxy instructions, pour part A and then part B into a plastic mixing tub. Stir well for 30 seconds and then pour out onto your countertop. Using a roller, spread the epoxy evenly over your surface. Trade your roller out for a brush and spread the epoxy all the way to the edges of your surface and down the sides. Once you've covered the top and side surfaces of your plywood pieces, it's time to hit pause so things can dry, preferably overnight. Clean up, rest up, and say goodnight to your countertops until tomorrow. After your first coat is completely dry, mix up enough epoxy for a top coat on all of your plywood surfaces. Once again, follow the instructions and using the same 2:1 ratio, mix up the epoxy, stir well, then pour the epoxy mixture out onto the countertop. Using a brush, spread the epoxy evenly across the entire surface and down the sides. Allow the top coat to fully dry. This will take a few days. Once the top coat is dry, it's time to mount the countertop. Center the countertop slab on the top of the cabinet. Choose a screw length that won't poke through the top of the cabinet and screw the countertop into place from the bottom up through the cabinet frame and into the countertop. And that's it! Your new kitchen island is ready to roll. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time on Done DIY.